The glow of the Apple event stage always promises a brighter future, but in the dimly lit corners of the tech world, a different narrative is unfolding. Apple recently held a massive presentation, and while the majority of the audience was fixated on the breathtaking thinness of the new iPad Pro and those brilliant OLED screens, a silent execution was taking place. Apple didn't just update its product lineup, it quietly made a decision that fundamentally alters the reality for those of us still holding on to our older devices. If you haven't checked the store page lately, you might not realize that the gate has already closed. The reveal is stark. Apple has officially discontinued several legendary iPad models, including the 6th and 7th generation iPads and specific Legacy Pro models like the 10.5-inch version. These weren't just random choices. These devices represented the primary entry point for millions of students, budget-conscious creative professionals, and casual users who relied on the legacy hardware to remain part of the ecosystem. By removing these models, Apple isn't just clearing shelf space, they are effectively marking the end of an era. This affects the modern consumer in a very direct and personal way, as the affordable bridge to the iPad experience is being dismantled in favor of a much more expensive, power-heavy future. This massive transition is happening right now, perfectly timed with the launch of the M4 iPad Pro, the most powerful tablet ever conceived by human engineering. This shift is global, impacting everything from the inventory at your local Apple store to the fluctuating prices on the second-hand market. But why now? Why kill off the very devices that made the iPad a household name in schools and small businesses? The answer isn't just about the desire to sell new hardware to boost a stagnant sales cycle. It is about a structural pivot in Apple's architecture. They are clearing the path for what Tim Cook has signaled as the next great frontier, Apple Intelligence. For the legacy user, the person still clutching an A-series chip device, the news is sobering. Apple has realized that to run the local large language models and AI-driven workflows of the future, they need more than just a fast processor. They need a specific type of silicon that the older models simply do not possess. This isn't just a standard software update you can choose to ignore. It's a hardware-level exclusion. If you're still using one of these older devices, this affects you more than you think. You might be holding a piece of tech that is about to become a brick for the new AI era, unable to process the very features that will define the next decade of computing. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. It is vital to understand that this isn't just a localized event. Wall Street has been pressuring Apple to prove it can compete with the likes of Google and OpenAI. This pressure has forced Apple's hand, leading them to draw a definitive line in the sand between the past and the future. On one side, you have the new M-series users who will enjoy the fruits of AI integration. On the other, you have the millions of people who are being pushed into what we can only call legacy mode. The personal impact here is truly massive. Let's think about the student who bought a 7th generation iPad thinking it would last through their entire university career. Think about the digital artist who has used the 10.5-inch Pro for years and suddenly finds that the upcoming OS might leave them behind. Apple is making a gamble that the allure of AI will outweigh the frustration of those left in the dust. But the biggest change isn't just about which iPads are gone or which chips are being promoted. It is about a specific hidden hardware requirement that Apple has tucked inside the new M4 models, something that makes your current device obsolete faster than you ever expected. This secret is the real reason the old iPads had to go. We'll get to the specific details of that hardware gate in just a few more seconds, as the future of your technology depends on it. To understand why these legendary devices are being sent to the legacy bin, we must first examine the historical trajectory of the iPad itself. In its infancy, the iPad was essentially an oversized iPhone, a consumption-centric device meant for reading digital magazines, watching streaming movies, and performing light web browsing. But a fundamental shift occurred when Apple introduced the M1 chip into the iPad Pro. That was the moment Tim Cook and his engineering team signaled a new, aggressive ambition. They wanted the iPad to be a true computer. This transition wasn't merely about clever marketing. It was about moving the tablet onto the exact same silicon foundation as the MacBook. For a while, this strategy seemed to work perfectly, and creating a powerful ecosystem where the lines between mobile and desktop computing began to blur for the modern consumer. However, this success eventually created an unforeseen problem for Apple's financial goals: a massive sales plateau. For the last 3 years, iPad sales have struggled to find significant upward growth. The reason was simple yet devastating for the company's bottom line. People realized that an iPad from 2018 or 2020 still felt perfectly fine for their daily needs. If you were using a 2018 iPad Pro with an A12X chip, it was still incredibly fast for almost everything you actually did. People weren't upgrading because the hardware had vastly outpaced the software's demands. This stagnation was a nightmare for Wall Street, which demands constant quarterly growth and frequent hardware upgrade cycles. Apple found itself in a precarious position where its own reputation for high quality, long-lasting engineering was preventing it from selling the next generation of products to its loyal base. At the same time, the global tech landscape was shifting violently underneath Apple's feet. Every major competitor, Google, Microsoft, and OpenAI, was racing toward an AI-first future at breakneck speed. In the eyes of the public and the tech press, Apple was seen as falling dangerously behind the curve. While others were showcasing generative AI and impressive large language models, Apple remained relatively quiet, focusing on iterative updates. But behind the scenes, a silicon revolution was being meticulously planned. Apple realized that to regain its market dominance, it couldn't just offer a slightly faster chip or a thinner screen. Afterwards, it had to fundamentally change what an iPad was capable of doing. This necessity led to the birth of the Apple Intelligence Strategy. This strategy is not just another standard software update like the ones we see every September. It represents a total pivot in Apple's internal architecture to run local large language models AI that lives securely on your device rather than on a distant server. The hardware requires more than just simple raw clock speed. It requires highly specialized components. This is where the contrast between the old A-series chips and the new M4 silicon becomes an unbridgeable canyon. The A-series chips found in the now discontinued models, like the iPad 6th and 7th generations, were built for a vastly different era of computing. They possess basic neural engines, but they were never designed to handle the trillions of operations required for real-time, on-device AI processing that Apple is now prioritizing. Contrast that with the M4. This is a chip built on a cutting-edge 3-nanometer process, specifically optimized from the ground up for the future of AI. Think about this for a second. Why would Apple skip the M3 chip entirely for the iPad and jump straight to M4? It is a question that reveals the sheer urgency of their current situation. Most people don't realize that the jump to M4 was a calculated move to give the iPad a neural engine that is leagues ahead of anything currently available in the Mac lineup. Apple skipped a whole generation of silicon because they simply couldn't afford to wait. They needed a chip that could satisfy Wall Street's demand for AI dominance, while forcing the legacy user to finally admit that their 2018 device is no longer fine. The old Apple was often obsessed with thinness as the primary selling point. Now things change. It's about a specific hardware requirement that will lock millions of people out of the future of the iOS operating system. The list of devices being pushed into the legacy bin is not just a collection of random model numbers. It's a catalog of the most successful entry-level hardware Apple has ever produced. We are looking specifically at the 6th and 7th generation iPads, machines that filled classrooms for years. Along with them, the 10.5-inch iPad Pro, once a flagship, is being ushered toward its final software updates. For the modern consumer, seeing these names is a sobering reminder that in high-speed silicon, yesterday's flagship is today's relic. This transition isn't a slow fade. It is a surgical cut designed to separate old architecture from the new, intelligent vision of future computing. The reason for this aggressive move lies in the power gap between these older devices and what the new M4 chip demands for its core functions. To understand the scale of this canyon, we have to look at the numbers Apple usually keeps buried in technical white papers. The M4 is built on a cutting-edge 3-nanometer process, allowing for billions more transistors to be packed into the same tiny space. But the real star isn't the CPU, it is the Neural Processing Unit, or NPU. This specialized hardware is designed for the massive, parallel mathematical computations required to run artificial intelligence effectively and safely. Let's use hard data. The M4 performs 38 trillion operations per second. Compare that to the A10 Fusion chip inside the 6th generation iPad or the A12 Bionic in later models. Those older chips were miracles, but they lacked the NPU architecture to handle the workloads of modern large language models. When you compare 38 trillion operations to the capabilities of an A-series chip, the gap is equivalent to moving from a carriage to a jet. Apple knows that to integrate Apple Intelligence deeply into the operating system, they cannot keep dragging these older processors behind. They require a clean slate to build upon now. This strategy creates two distinct classes of users. On one side, the M-Series Elite will have access to the full suite of future AI features, from advanced Siri to generative tools. On the other, A-Series users are relegated to legacy mode. They might receive security patches, but they are being locked out of the future. Tim Cook has been clear about this direction. He has stated that AI represents a core opportunity and that the new iPad Pro was built specifically for this era. This isn't just jargon. It is a warning that the criteria for what makes a device functional has changed forever today. In might sit there with your current iPad, thinking it's still fast enough for daily tasks. It opens Netflix instantly, and the browser remains snappy. But here's the problem. When the next version of iPadOS drops, fast enough won't matter if you lack the specific hardware keys. Without an NPU, your device won't just run new features slowly, it simply won't run them at all. Apple is moving towards software that relies on specific hardware logic rather than raw clock speed. If that logic isn't present in your silicon, your iPad becomes a consumption-only device in a world moving toward generative production. This shift isn't just about software compatibility, it is about the fundamental resale value of the hardware you own today. By drawing this line so clearly, Apple is signaling to everyone that the era of the A-series iPad is over. This is an economic earthquake for millions of legacy users who expected their devices to hold value for years. But wait until you see what is actually happening to the resale value of the devices Apple just killed in its recent presentation. As the realization sets in that these iPads are barred from the future of Apple intelligence, the secondary market is starting to react with brutal efficiency. It is a bloodbath of falling prices and lost value, and most people are about to be caught completely off guard by how fast their tech investment is evaporating into thin air as we speak. This is only the beginning of a much larger shift. If you are holding on to one of these older models, you are watching your value disappear before your eyes. The window to sell is closing faster than you think now. The shockwaves from Apple's recent hardware call are first being felt in the cold, hard numbers of the secondary market. If you head over to platforms like eBay or Backmarket right now, you can see the narrative shifting in real time. For years, older iPads held their value with a tenacity that other tech brands could only envy. A used iPad was seen as a safe investment, a reliable tool that would serve a student or a casual browser for half a decade without missing a beat. But the moment the M4 iPad Pro was unveiled, that perceived value hit a wall of obsolescence. Prices for non-M series iPads are beginning to tank as savvy buyers realize these devices are effectively on life support. This isn't just a minor dip, it is a fundamental revaluation of what an iPad is worth. Dealers who once stocked up on refurbished 7th generation models are suddenly finding themselves holding inventory that no longer has a clear path forward in the Apple Intelligence era. And the prices are dropping because the demand has shifted from simple web browsing to the upcoming requirements of the intelligent future. This economic reality is a bitter pill for those who viewed their tablets as long-term assets rather than disposable gadgets. This brings us directly to the concept of the obsolescence wall. It is a subtle but devastating form of software locking that bypasses the physical condition of the device. You might have a 10.5-inch iPad Pro with a pristine screen and a battery that still lasts all day. To the naked eye, the hardware is perfect. But the moment Apple prevents Apple Intelligence from running on that specific architecture, the device feels ancient overnight. It isn't that your iPad stopped working, it's that the digital world around it is moving to a language your device cannot speak. When the next wave of AI-integrated apps hits the App Store, they will demand the neural processing unit that your older iPad simply does not have. This creates a psychological shift where users feel their perfectly functional tech is now a burden rather than a tool. This software locking is the ultimate gatekeeper, turning once great machines into digital paperweights that are restricted to the legacy tasks of the past while the world moves forward without them. The economic impact for the average consumer is staggering and potentially exclusionary. For years, the $329 entry-level iPad was the golden gateway into the Apple ecosystem. It was the budget option that allowed millions of students and creative professionals to experience the quality of iPadOS without a massive investment. However, the entry price for a future-proof iPad has just skyrocketed. To ensure you have access to the upcoming AI features, you are now forced toward the M-series chips. This means the days of a truly cheap, long-term iPad are effectively over. To get the AI experience that Apple is marketing so aggressively, you now have to spend significantly more than that old entry point. The floor has been raised, and for many users, that height is out of reach. We are witnessing the death of the affordable iPad as we knew it, replaced by a hierarchy where only those with deep pockets can stay current with the latest software. If you have made it this far into this exploration, you are already ahead of most people. You are starting to see the pattern that Apple isn't talking about in their glossy commercials. They want you to focus on the thinness of the M4 and the vibrance of the OLED display, but the real story is the silent exclusion of their existing user base. This creates a massive consumer dilemma that millions are facing right now. Should you buy the discounted M2 iPad Air or save for the M4 Pro? If you make the wrong choice now, you might end up buying the wrong device for 2026. The M2 is powerful, but will it be enough for the second generation of AI? This uncertainty is exactly what drives the upgrade cycle that Apple relies on to keep growth numbers high. Then there is the question of e-waste. Apple highlights its environmental goals, but there is a contradiction in making millions of functional devices feel unusable through software exclusion. When a perfectly good iPad is barred from new features, it often ends up in a landfill long before its hardware has failed. This artificial shortening of the product lifecycle flies in the face of sustainability. The impact is huge, but the real shocker is what this tells us about the upcoming iPhone 16. The clues are all right here. The way Apple handled the M4 skip and the death of the A-series iPads provides a roadmap for the future of the iPhone. The clues are hidden in the neural engine's architecture. By analyzing the bridge between the iPad Pro's sudden leap and the next generation of mobile silicon, we begin to see that Apple is preparing a similar gatekeeping strategy for the smartphone market. The rules of the game have changed, and the next reveal will prove that no corner of the ecosystem is safe from this AI-driven evolution. All eyes now turn toward the horizon, specifically toward the upcoming Worldwide Developer Conference, or WWDC. This is where the mystery of why Apple killed those beloved legacy devices will be fully unmasked. While the hardware launch gave us the skeleton of Apple's new direction, WWDC will provide the muscle and the nerves. It is here that the AI first operating system will make its grand debut, and the true extent of the division between the user classes will become undeniable. We are expecting a radical reimagining of iPadOS, one that moves away from being a simple touch interface and toward becoming a proactive, intelligent assistant. The developers gathered at these conferences are the architects who will build the software walls around the legacy users. They are no longer just coding apps. They are training models that live within the iPad's own brain. And this shift reveals that Apple is no longer just a hardware company focused on thin displays and elegant hinges. They are evolving into an AI infrastructure company. They are building the edge computing nodes of the future. By 2025, the timeline becomes clear. Any device without a dedicated neural processing unit will likely be considered legacy hardware, regardless of how fast it feels today. This is the fastest architectural transition in Apple's storied history, even surpassing the move from PowerPC to Intel or Intel to Apple Silicon. This isn't just about a faster tablet, it's about a fundamental change in how a computer thinks. Imagine a version of Siri that doesn't need to ping a server in North Carolina to understand a simple request. Local Siri upgrades are at the heart of this transition. By processing natural language directly on the M-series chips, Apple can offer privacy and speed that cloud-based competitors struggle to match. But this local processing requires the immense power of the M4's neural processing unit. We are looking at a future where AI-driven photo editing allows for complex generative fills and object manipulation in real time, right on your tablet, without an internet connection. Automated workflows that predict your next move, summarizing thousands of emails or organizing your entire project library without a single tap will become the standard. However, these features will not be backward compatible. If your iPad doesn't have an M-series heart, these features will simply not exist for you. And when a developer creates a groundbreaking tool that requires 38 trillion operations per second to function, an A-series iPad isn't just slow, it is incapable of even opening the file. This creates a functional divide that is deeper than any we have seen before. Apple is effectively telling the world that if you want to participate in the next decade of innovation, you must pay for M-series hardware. The industry ripple effect is already being felt across the globe. While Samsung and Google have spent the last year pushing AI phones and tablets, Apple is leveraging its unique ecosystem lock-in. By integrating the AI so deeply into both the silicon and the software simultaneously, they are creating a walled garden that is harder to leave than ever before. This leads us to a chilling pattern interrupt. But if Apple is willing to kill off its most popular student iPads to force this shift, what does that mean for the rest of your desk? What does it mean for your MacBook or your Apple Watch? The message is clear. No product line is exempt from the AI tax. If the hardware cannot support the local models, it is slated for retirement. We are seeing the beginning of a total ecosystem refresh where the old way of computing, relying on raw CPU speed, is being replaced by intelligent operations. The AI infrastructure transition means Apple is securing its future by making hardware indispensable. They are competing against the idea of cloud-based AI. By keeping everything local, they solve privacy concerns, but this solution has a high cost. It requires specialized silicon only newest devices possess. For students with legacy iPads, the realization is sinking in. Their device is a relic, but one detail about the M4 is being ignored. This hidden secret is the key. It suggests the iPhone 16 launch will be aggressive. This specific hardware secret is the absolute key to everything Apple is building. The timing of this sudden architectural purge is not accidental, and to understand the why now question, we must look beyond the sleek aluminum frames and into the boardrooms where Wall Street analysts dictate the tempo. Apple's stock had been navigating a period of relative stagnation, with investors growing increasingly restless over the company's perceived silence in the generative AI race dominated by the likes of Google, Microsoft, and OpenAI. The iPad, once the darling of the mobile revolution, and had faced a multi-year sales plateau because the hardware was simply too good for its own sake. A consumer holding a 2018 iPad Pro had little reason to upgrade when their device still handled every task with ease. This created a crisis of success for the corporate entity. To break this cycle, Apple needed more than just a thinner screen. They needed a narrative shift that made the old hardware feel fundamentally broken. By tethering the future of Apple Intelligence exclusively to the newest silicon, they didn't just release a product, they created a massive psychological wall. This is the art of exclusivity used as a weaponized marketing tool. By making these highly anticipated AI features exclusive to the newest hardware, Apple is generating an artificial sense of urgency, a fear of missing out that targets even the most casual users. It is a brilliant, if controversial, gatekeeping strategy. They are shifting the value proposition from what the device can do today to what the device will be allowed to do tomorrow. If you're not on the right side of the silicon divide, you are effectively being told that your digital experience will remain static while the rest of the world moves into a proactive, liquid era of computing. This creates two distinct classes of users: those with the M-series chips who are invited into the AI future, and those with A-series chips who are relegated to legacy mode. This brings us to the heart of the controversy. Is this a legitimate hardware requirement or a calculated case of planned obsolescence? Many industry critics and technical enthusiasts argue that older chips, specifically the M1 or even the robust A12Z found in previous Pro models, possess enough neural processing capability to handle basic local language models. They suggest that Apple is software capping these older devices, not because they lack the raw power, but because the company needs to force an upgrade cycle to satisfy Wall Street's demand for growth. Apple, of course, maintains an authoritative perspective, with Tim Cook and his engineering teams insisting that the 38 trillion operations per second provided by the M4's NPU are a baseline requirement for the seamless, private experience they envision. They are drawing a line in the sand. On one side of that line is the past, a world of manual input and traditional apps. On the other side is the AI future, a world where the device anticipates your needs. For the consumer, this creates a frustrating dilemma. You might feel that your current iPad is perfectly fast for Netflix, browsing, or even light creative work. But the problem is that when the next version of iPadOS drops, raw speed won't be the currency of the realm. AI compatibility will be. If you lack the specific NPU architecture, your device will technically function, but it will be excluded from the very features that define the next decade of the ecosystem. This isn't just an upgrade, it's a fundamental change in the rules of digital ownership. Apple is making a bet that you will care more about having an intelligent tablet than you do about the longevity of your current hardware. However, there is a way to navigate this transition without falling into the trap of spending $2,000 on a top-spec M4 Pro. Most people don't realize this, but the best value in the market right now isn't the flashy new flagship that Apple is parading in front of the cameras. I've spent hours analyzing the benchmarks and looking at the hardware requirements for the upcoming AI features, and there is a hidden sweet spot in the current lineup. There are specific models that Apple didn't kill during this transition, but is quietly trying to steer you away from because they offer a better price-to-performance ratio for the AI era. These are the devices that possess the necessary M-series architecture to run Apple Intelligence but don't carry the Pro tax that Wall Street loves so much. I've looked at the data, and there's a clear winner that balances future-proofing with fiscal responsibility. We're about to reveal exactly which iPad you should actually buy to survive this AI transition without breaking the bank. The era of the general-purpose tablet is officially fading, replaced by a new and more rigid identity for the iPad as an AI edge computing node. Apple is no longer just selling a glass window into the internet. They are selling a localized processing hub designed to handle the heavy lifting of machine learning right in the palm of your hand. This transition is the final verdict on the legacy era. When we look back at this specific moment in tech history, we will see it as the point where the iPad stopped being a secondary screen for consumption and started being a cognitive tool for creation. When the consumer must understand that the hardware they choose today isn't just about clock speeds or screen brightness. It's about having the keys to the kingdom of intelligent features that will soon define the modern professional workflow. This leads us to extreme urgency for anyone currently looking to upgrade. If you ignore this massive architectural shift and buy a 9th-gen iPad today simply because it is the cheapest option, you are buying into technology slated for a dead end. By December, as the first comprehensive wave of Apple Intelligence features begins to roll out, that budget device will start to feel like a slow, unresponsive relic. You might save a few $100s now, but you pay an incredibly high price in future utility and software longevity. Transition to AI is the single biggest change in the ecosystem since the move from Intel processors to Apple Silicon. It is an exciting leap for human-computer interaction, but as we've seen, it is also an expensive and calculated one. The entry-level price for a future-proof experience has shifted upward, and navigating this reality requires a tactical approach. You have a direct choice before you right now. You can choose to stay with the technology of yesterday, relying on the A-series chips that served us all well for a decade, but lack the specialized neural muscle required for what is coming next. Or, you can prepare yourself for the profound transformation that is already underway across the global digital landscape. Apple has already made their strategic choice. Tim Cook and his leadership team have signaled through the M4 launch that they are willing to leave behind millions of loyal users to satisfy the growth demands of Wall Street and secure their lead in the global AI race against competitors like Google and Microsoft. Now, it is your turn to decide where you stand in this new digital hierarchy. Are you going to be a legacy user clinging to the past, or will you be an AI-first professional ready for the future? If you think the iPad transition was aggressive or even controversial, just wait until you see what the corporate entity has planned for the Mac. The M4 chip's debut in a tablet rather than a laptop was a deliberate and high-stakes warning shot to the entire industry. Now it proved that Apple is ready to prioritize the neural processing unit over almost every other technical specification. When the next generation of MacBooks and iMacs arrives, we expect a similar culling of older models to ensure that every machine in the professional lineup is a capable, independent AI workstation. This strategy is about total ecosystem dominance through hardware-locked intelligence. The clues are all there, hidden in the thermal designs and the silicon architecture of the latest iPad Pro. There is a secret inside the M4's efficiency that suggests a radical redesign of the Mac is much closer than anyone previously anticipated. As we approach the Worldwide Developer Conference, the full mystery of Apple's long-term plan will finally be unveiled. And the sweet spot we identified earlier, those M1 and M2 models that offer the perfect bridge between price and power, will likely become the most sought-after devices on the second-hand market as people realize the true value of the NPU. Stay ahead of the curve by paying close attention to model numbers and silicon generations. Don't let a low price tag blind you to the reality of the AI tax. The world is changing faster than ever, and our tools must evolve too. Stay informed, stay critical, and make sure your next purchase is one that lasts well into the next decade. Subscribe to our channel to stay updated on all news from WWDC as we continue to track this unprecedented shift in the tech landscape. Stay ahead of the curve. See you in the next one.